This documentary is part of the Saluting Their Service Commemorations program supported by the Australian Department of Veterans Affairs.
The program's objective is to acknowledge and commemorate those who served Australia and its allies in wars, conflicts and peace operations.
My name is Greg Twemlow and I'm a founder and director of 7mile Venture Lab, a registered charity operating on Sydney's northern beaches.
The documentary is a co-production between 7mile Venture Lab and Lunar Media TV. My name is Anastase and I'm the owner of Lunar Media TV and the principal videographer.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have co-produced this documentary with Kalahni and a wonderful experience to work with our veterans and to understand what they sacrificed to serve their country. 7mile bid for the Veterans Affairs grant to help preserve Australia's wartime heritage by involving veterans throughout our Northern Beaches community to highlight their service and sacrifice.
We thank our veterans and the young people who acted as the interviewers.
And a special thanks to Harbour Diggers RSL Club management and staff, and to the RSL sub-branch president Sean Roud and Pamela Hansen. I think you'll enjoy watching our veterans reveal their lifelong commitment to serve not only their country, but also those less fortunate.
It's been a privilege and an honor to help devise the project and meet so many incredible people during the production.
Our community owes an outstanding debt of gratitude to our brave veterans, and it's why we all salute their service. Enjoy the documentary.
Thank you.
The waves lap quietly at the shore as I walk over between the sand dunes. People talk and laugh. Children play. I take off my shoes and feel the warm, dry sand under my feet. It has been 3 years, 8 months and 27 days since I last stood peacefully on this beach. The warm spring breeze blows the smell of salt water into my nose. I take off my tunic and slouch hat. I sit down. The sun warms my shoulders and back. The first time I felt this in 4 years. My head is filled with memories. The noises from the battlefield. The guns, the cannons, the screams. I remember sitting in the trench, frightened, as shells went off around me. The desperate cries for help. As I sit here on this beach, there is no mud and no blood. There is no more war. There is no more death. The war is finally over. Now it is time for peace. I slowly walk down to the shoreline. I bow my head, close my eyes. I remember.
Hi, my name is Hartnell Dean. I'm a Year 11 student in Stella College in Manly, and I'm talking to Wing Commander Mike Elport. Mike, thank you for your service to the Commonwealth and for sharing your story here today.
Okay, well, I'm delighted to meet you, and I also feel privileged to be asked to introduce this program, Saluting the Services. To be here along with some homegrown veteran heroes. Okay, good. Well, I'm very happy to take any questions you may have.
I'd love to ask some questions. So do you have any particular memories from your long flying career that you would like to share with us?
Right. I particularly liked and respected paratroopers. Now, anybody who jumps out of a moving aircraft has got to be, okay, I'll just say that commands my respect. But there was a particular time when the loadmaster, and the loadmaster is also the dispatcher for paratroopers, and he turned up on the flight deck and he said, "I'm sorry, Captain, I forgot my teeth." And I thought, I don't mind that for me, but he's going to be the chap in front of the paratroopers shouting this lot out. But anyway, I don't know how he got on, but the main thing is there's a red light comes on, there's a green light on, and then he's there to help them push them out of the door. But it was one of those lighter moments. Bring your bloody teeth. Sorry, excuse me. But another trip which I thoroughly enjoyed, when the Queen was going to open the Commonwealth Conference in Lusaka, she needed a bag carrier. Now, when the Queen has bags, the Queen has bags. So we had a separate aircraft for the bags, and that was me in my Hercules. So we picked up the bags at Dar es Salaam. We went down to Malawi, which was the first stop, and the Queen was then going to follow in a Royal Air Force VC-10. We were met by a very excited ground personnel, said, "Can you tell us which sort of VC-10 it is?" And I said, "It's a VC-10. And then happily my engineer knew more about these things than I do, and he said, "No, it's a Super VC-10. He said, right, because what they needed to know is to get the height of the steps right. So we didn't want the Queen having to leap down 2 or 3 feet or to climb up. Anyway, the engineer had the work, and it went up, and the Queen came down, and that was absolutely fine. We had a number of other interesting things as we went around, because we were sort of on protocol. We were being looked after just like the Royals were. But we did get, when they brought the bags back from the first time, the leading footman said to me, "We've lost one of the bags." Oh, no. And I thought, I've only had them for 24 hours and I've lost a bag. And anyway, we looked under the cargo netting, and sure enough, there was this sort of attaché case with ciphers on it and that sort of thing. And we said, "Is this it?" "Yes, that's it." And I said, "Was it important? Did this have the tiara in it or anything like that?" I said, No, it's got maps of Scotland in it."
Oh.
And I said, "Maps of Scotland?" He said, "Well, they're planning for the next trip. She goes back from here and goes up to Balmoral." But there we are. I had not lost one of the Queen's bags. But the other thing is we did pick up a lot of the things where they were given gifts. And so there were spears, there were shields, there was all sorts of things. That's why we needed my Hercules to take all these extra bags back. So that was a bit of fun.
Can you give any examples of how different military life is to civilian life?
I think the biggest thing is that you sign up for what you're going to do, and you're trained for what you're going to do. And this may mean that you're putting not only your life, but also those under your command on the line. So that goes into the brain. And the example that I can think of where it wasn't my own example, but when we were retaking the Falklands, we had the Special Air Services, the SAS, and they were holding regular briefings with the designated Hercules crews who were going to take them down to the Falkland Islands. And this was all top secret. I can talk about it now because it's a sufficiently long time ago. Yeah. But when you're Special Air Services, you are going to take risks. And so they would come out with a statement, right, we will need 2 Hercules, both filled with SAS troopers, because we might lose one. It might get shot down, it might crash land, and we might lose all our paratroopers. And my colleagues were all thinking, this is interesting. That night, I think there were a few people phoned home and said, darling, could you just get onto the insurance broker and just take out a bit more life insurance? Why, darling, what's the matter? No, I've been thinking about this for a while. Just give them a crafty call and up the life insurance. So couldn't say anything more about it than that. In my own example, there was, when we were taking the Queen around Africa, it was a time when Zimbabwe was being particularly hostile to anything British. And my wife said, well, and there was talk about would the Queen be shot down. And so, they had made preparations for that. They said, yes, made preparations for that. There you are in a military Hercules stooging around. What about you being shot down? So I actually did take out a little bit more term for 1 year. I did actually say, can you insure me just for a week? I said, well, no, the minimum we can insure you for is a year. And they said, it's quite cheap. So I took out a bit of extra insurance. So that is a difference. You know you might be putting your life on the line. And that comes with the territory.
Do you believe that civilians do not fully understand what veterans sacrifice for their country?
I think part of that I've already put into the previous answer, and perhaps an infantry soldier would be able to give a better insight into that, because he can actually see the person that he might have just blown someone's head off. Sorry to be graphic about it. As a pilot, and let's go back to the Battle of Britain pilots, you were one stage removed from it. You weren't shooting at a chap, you were shooting at the aircraft. A nice little courtesy, if you managed to shoot down the aircraft, the Luftwaffe Me-109 or whatever it was a fairly common practice to actually follow the aircraft down to see if the chap came out on the end of his parachute and that he was alive and well, and then fly alongside, just giving a little wing waggle as a respect for a fellow combatant. And I think that's rather nice.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
But so that's a courtesy. I think that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is more understood now, and so it should be, because if people have seen these horrendous sights, it must play with your minds. But as a pilot, you are one removed from it.
You retired at age 70. What was your transition from your military life to civilian life like?
Absolutely hectic. So the sequence was, I retired on the 3rd of November 2013. We sold the house, we packed up the house, we flew out to Australia on Remembrance Day, a day to remember, the 11th. We arrived on the 13th of November. We moved into a duplex with my younger daughter. I'd basically paid for the house, but I wasn't allowed to own a house, so I had a deal with my daughter that at the appropriate time she would remember who had put up the money for this house. There was no problem there. And had a hip replacement, and happy Christmas. 5 years later, moved into the apartments upstairs, the over 55 seniors living accommodation. I joined the sub-branch of Harvard RSL, and here I am, happy as a sandboy. Right, so mention of meeting up with this pilot in the toilet. Actually, we met outside, and he was in the Australian lightweight flying suit, and I was in my Royal Air Force, and we only have one weight of suit, and that's for a temperate climate. And bearing in mind that I was based in Changi, you've been through Singapore.
Yes.
What's it like there?
So hot.
Hot and sticky. So he was based down in Melbourne, where every now and again it gets a little bit colder, and so we swapped flying suits. So that's why we went into a gents' toilet. So just to put that to right, in case that's been worrying you. But now I'd like for viewers to sit back and enjoy the stories of the other genuine Northern Beaches veterans, ADF veterans, as we salute their service. Thank you very much, Hartnell. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Thea Anastase. I'm a Year 11 Mosman High School student, and today I will be interviewing Barry Spencer, OAM. Barry, thank you for your service to Australia and for sharing your story today. What age were you and what branch of the Australian Defence Force did you serve with?
I joined the Royal Australian Navy just on my 20th birthday, and I spent the next 35 years full service with the Navy and then 5 years reserve time on completion of that.
What motivated you to join the Navy?
There was lots of stories in that, but I ran into a guy one night at I think it was a birthday party or a christening or whatever, and he was in uniform and we had a long discussion and he convinced me that I should join the Navy and told me all the good things that happened. And our first week at sea I found out, you know, that he was a terrible liar, but you know, yeah, but I wanted to join the Navy anyhow. So.
What jobs or roles did you service in the Navy?
I started off as a seaman, which you work on the upper deck, and worked my way through from ordinary seaman to able seaman, leading seaman and petty officer. And when I became petty officer, we were parade ground instructors. But in 1970, they introduced the coxswain's branch was always there, but they were the chief coxswains who used to go to sea and regulate the ship's company. But they needed petty officer coxswains for patrol boats and various other things. So I was selected in the first group to go to HMAS Cerberus and do a coxswain's course. I was then posted on completion of that course to Watson on South Head to do a small navigation course. And then I proceeded to be posted to HMAS Barbette. And we worked out of Sydney for some time, and then we were the first patrol boat squadron that went to Cairns, and they set the Darwin base, the patrol boat base in Cairns up, yeah, and that was about 1971. Yeah. And from there, I was promoted to chief, and from chief I then was promoted to warrant officer, and I was then selected to become an officer, and I spent my last 7 years as an officer.
Great. What were your thoughts and feelings after the first few months?
Oh, depends where you were at the time and what you were doing. It was an adventure. You know, I was young, and after the first 6 months, when you got out of recruit school, which wasn't anything you'd write home about, it wasn't that pleasant, but I was a class leader, so I sort of had a couple of different perks. But once you got out and became real people again, and you went to sea and you know, travelled to Far East and various places like that, it put a whole different perspective on your outlook.
You were posted on many ships over your career. Tell me about your posting in Darwin.
I had about, I first posted to Darwin on the HMAS Arrow patrol boat, and we hadn't been in Darwin long when Cyclone Tracy arrived, and we were out, secured us, had 4 life buoys out in the harbour for patrol boats, and we were at anchor, or secured to the buoy till about 2 o'clock in the morning, when we ripped the cable off the ship, and we were underway for a couple of hours of bouncing around Darwin Harbour. We did 2 enormous rolls on the patrol boats. They had 2 sea suctions, they had a lower one and an upper one, and we rolled that forward on lower sea suction. We got an air bubble in it, so we're practically on our side to starboard, then we to port, then the alarms started going off and we couldn't stop the alarms and the engines, and so it was decided we would run the boat and ground it at a place called just around the corner from the wharf. We got blown up under the wharf, and we ended up sinking alongside Darwin Wharf. Yeah.
How long did you serve and what rank did you serve?
In the Navy?
Yep, a chief. Yep.
Well, as I say, 35 years full-time service, and then 5 years reserve time, with a day off for my birthday, as you had to retire the day before your birthday and then have your birthday and then go back.
The contrast of civilian and military life is stark. Is there a particular memory of your time in the Navy that highlights the differences?
Well, yes, I think the service life is entirely different to a civilian life. They do mix and they can mix, but where the Defence Force, as I remember it, was a disciplined service, and sometimes you had to carry out things that you mightn't have completely agreed with. Whereas if you were a civilian person, well, if you didn't like it, you didn't really have to do it, you know. So, but the transition from service life to back into normal life, it's not difficult. There's no difference in the people. It's just that you sometimes have a different outlook on, and that you don't have to be somewhere exactly at time. Although it's difficult not to, when you go out these days, to be, you know, there 10 minutes early like you do in the armed forces. When you're due to take a watch over, you know, you start 10 minutes early, you know.
I'm curious about how your service changed you as a person.
Well, I don't know, but it's part of growing up. I mean, when in 1960, when I was 20, it might be argued that we were all starting to find our feet after the Depression, the Second World War, and everything else that went on, and suddenly there was, I guess, freedom's the wrong word, but where you could get out and enjoy yourself. But we could enjoy yourself in the Navy as well. I mean, apart from the long hours at sea and various other things, but there's a lot of sport and a lot of things that young sailors do, which, you know, makes up for it, I suspect. Yeah.
It's fair to say civilians generally don't understand what our veterans sacrifice to save their country. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, look, I've often given talks at various places, and you know, people think it's just, you know, you're there on a ship and that's what you do, but you know, there's a lot of things that we do that you know, you go to places that have been damaged by storms, you help people, you know, been involved in a couple of sea rescues, the things that the average person doesn't really know, and the friendships you make in the armed forces, they stick with you forever. But look, as I say, 35 years and another 5, but I haven't found it difficult to transgress back into the civilian life. It's, I've been involved as director of a couple of golf clubs, or an RSL club and golf club, and you know, nothing really changes. Everything's still organised. You know.
Could you please share how you coped with your transition out of the military?
Yes, well, as I say, I did full-time service, and then I did 5 years reserve time, which was in between jobs. It wasn't constant, but I was in that period of time. I was a director of the Mosman Return Services Club. I was doing some legacy work. I was state president of the Naval Association, and I know you're mixing basically in a lot of those jobs with ex-service personnel, but the directorship of the Mosman Club, you understood or started to understand the difference between how things in the military are run and how a civilian organisation is run. Whereas, with military, it's you've got a job to do, you go out and you do it. Seems to me in the civilian world that you don't always have to do that. You can sit around and talk a bit about it, but military is a little bit different, where you have to react at the time.
I'm sure you learnt many skills in the Navy. How do you apply these skills in everyday civilian life?
Well, I think it's just dealing with people. I didn't have a trade in the Navy. I was a seaman, petty officer, then I was a coxswain, then I was a XO and a first lieutenant when I became an officer, and it's just dealing with people. I mean, young sailors are no different to young people out, or people in the street. We all have the same problems, we all have the same beliefs, and it's just that one's in a uniform and the other one's not. So I'm not sure there's a great deal of difference. Yeah.
Vets serve their country and often also find other ways to help people in need.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can be serving, but a lot of Navy people have other interests whilst they're still serving. I know we have guys that become scoutmasters, and I don't know, play sport, they get involved. So I think what it does is it allows you to have a wider scope on what you can do and what you can't do in life. And it gives you an opportunity to really find out something that perhaps without your time in the service you may not have realised that you had that ability to do whatever. Yeah.
If you could use only one word to describe the Navy, what would that word be?
Oh, I think 35 years full-time service. I loved it, and if I could go back, I'd probably join up again tomorrow. Now, look, there was highs and lows. There were dangerous times in it, but I just loved it. It's just something you either love or you don't. Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, look, there's a million things over the years that I've been involved in, but I always think that I was a leading seaman at HMAS Creswell, which is down the south coast, and I was a duty leading hand of the depot this night, and there were two sections. There was the officer side of it and marine section. And I got a call to report down marine section. They were sending a boat out to look for survivors off the WD Atlas that was taking water on board. It was a dredger. And I live down the waterfront, so I don't belong there, but away I went. And we were out there for about 2 hours searching for the Atlas and searching for survivors. And that's probably the roughest I think I've ever been in. The boat's only about 65 feet. I think that was the length of it. Plywood, but very powerful engines in them. And anyhow, we had to sort of turn around to go home, and the waves were pretty high. We figured somewhere in about 50 or 60 feet coming down. Yeah. So the turnaround to get back was a bit exciting for a couple of minutes, but anyhow, we got back alongside, and we'd had about a 35-foot, 40-foot split down the side of one of the boat on the, I think it was the port side. But we didn't find any survivors. So they crash sailed, I think, Vendetta, one of the destroyers from Sydney, and I think they got a couple of bodies and that, but yeah. So that's probably the most dangerous thing that I was involved in.
All right, well, Barry Spencer, OAM, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you.
Thank you.
My name is Luke McGuire. I'm a Year 11 student at St Paul's Catholic College, Manly, and I'm talking with Vietnam's veteran, Barry Collins. Barry, thank you for your service to Australia and for sharing your story today. Can you please tell us where you were born and where you lived prior to joining the Australian Defence Force?
I was born in Sydney, and I was living at Barrel, New South Wales, before I was, when I received my conscription notice. And I was at uni studying economics, and I didn't see myself as becoming an economist, and I ran out of deferrals and found myself on the way to Kapooka on the 7th of July 1969.
So you were conscripted into the army?
Yes, I was, yes.
Yeah, and so how did you feel, and how did your family and friends react knowing that you were going off to war?
I was quite ambivalent about it, and but my parents took it a bit hard. My father's brother, he was killed in the Second World War, and my mother had a bit of a breakdown through worry.
And which branch of the ADF did you serve in?
I was a gunner, an artillery gunner.
And what were your thoughts and feelings in the first few months of service?
The first few months was pretty difficult. It was training at Kapooka in winter. It was pretty cold, and the strict regimentation was a little bit of a shock to the system after the freedom of uni. However, I soon acclimatised, and it felt okay.
And the contrast of civilian and military life must be stark. Is there any particular memories of your time in the ADF that highlights these differences?
Yes, in the army, and particularly Vietnam, everything we did was important. The smallest things, like placing our equipment beside us in places where we could access the equipment in the dark, was important. Filling sandbags was important. Stringing the wire, everything we did was important. However, upon the return to civilian life, not much seemed to matter terribly much. No, it certainly didn't by contrast anyway.
And I'm curious about how your service changed you as a person.
The feeling is that it was probably the most exciting thing I've ever done. And I pursued that excitement for a long while with buddies, surfing buddies, whom I cruised the world with. Surfing, went everywhere, even all the way to France surfing, and 20 times to Indonesia and just about everywhere else in Southeast Asia where there's surf, and just looking for the adventure, but also maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Maintaining the healthy lifestyle.
And it's fair to say civilians generally don't understand what our veterans sacrifice to serve their country. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, that's right. Life goes on. That civilians can't sit around all day long ruminating on it. But for myself, I really I'm not worried about opinions. I assume you probably mean negative opinions. The opinions of people who weren't there is not terribly important, and I welcome them to their opinions, and that's, I'll leave it at that.
Could you please share how you coped with your transition out of the military?
As I said, I came home and I was left with the impression that I just completed this incredibly exciting thing, and I wanted more of it. And I had considered service elsewhere. And fortunately, surfing took over, and the surf trips and the adventures compensated greatly, and so that was a big part of the transition.
Yeah. I'm sure you learnt many skills in the ADF. How do you apply those skills in everyday civilian life?
The ability to be good with your hands is something prized in the army. The ability to effect small repairs. And to want to build things was just one of the great things in the army, and the introduction to basic tools to repair one's car, for instance. Well, also make surf. We didn't learn surfboard in the army, but the skills of putting things together was highly prized in the army, and took to it well.
Do you have any final thoughts on what you'd like to share?
Yes, I do, and that is I'd like to mention the attitude of the Vietnamese towards us. I went back in '92, and I was a little apprehensive. I thought, these people might justifiably harbour quite a grudge for what was done to them, and I was surprised to find the attitude of the ex-Viet Cong whom I met. They referred to us Australians as honourable warriors, and there was such a contrast to the attitude in Australia, particularly our government. The contrast couldn't have been starker. It was the irony of a former enemy having a better word for us than did the government here at the time. And what I'd like to say about Vietnam, what a fabulous place. There's good surf there at Da Nang every November, December, and motorbike riding. I did a motorbike ride with buddies from Hanoi, zigzag through the Songam Mountains all the way to China. Fabulous. Recommend it.
Barry, thank you for being a part of the Saluting Their Service project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was good
Cheers.
speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Harry Forsyth and I'm a Year 11 student at St Paul's Manly, and I'm talking today with Navy veteran Ray Bennie. Ray, thank you for your service to Australia and for sharing your story today. What age were you when you joined the Royal Australian Navy, and why the Navy?
I enlisted at 15 and a half, and the Navy was very, very attractive, having had a number of new recruits from my school area coming back to talk about their experience. And I think I was always a bit of an adventurer, and the Navy just seemed to be the way to travel and have a good job.
Yeah, awesome. So you were a volunteer?
I'm a volunteer, yes.
And so what motivated you to join the Navy?
My family came to Australia in 1969, and they settled in South Australia, and we were semi-rural. And I could already see around me that there weren't many job opportunities. And I think serving your country as well as being able to build a career was the thing that got it for me.
Yeah, right. And that would follow on from your adventurous
Absolutely,
mindset. Yeah,
yes.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
So what jobs or roles did you serve in the Navy?
Well, I joined as a junior recruit, which was a 12-month training period in Western Australia. I then did my gunnery category training, and I then spent 4 years at sea as a gunnery rate. And I had a real inkling to become a physical training instructor.
Right.
And I then transferred category and served out the rest of my time as a PT sailor.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So what were your thoughts and feelings after the first few months of this new role?
I found home.
Yeah, right.
It was brilliant. There were a whole group of young men becoming men and learning to be good citizens. And that really did it for me.
So tell us about your posting on HMAS Perth and briefly about the patrols boats out of Cairns.
I had just returned from England on HMAS Brisbane from the Silver Jubilee celebrations. And a fellow who didn't want to go to sea approached me, asked me for a swap posting. And I thought, another 4 months in the Far East, that's going to be fun. So when we got back to Sydney, I swapped, and the Perth sailed not long after that. And we had 4 months seeing ports, Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, Manila in the Philippines, and Kobe in Japan. And it was just a great trip. And it was from there that I was invited to join the patrol boat community. And I had to do a special course for that. And then I found myself posted to patrol boats in Cairns.
Yeah, wow. A lot of travelling.
A lot of travelling.
A lot of travelling. So how long did you serve and what rank did you achieve?
Leading Seaman Physical Trainer was my rank when I left the Navy, and I was in the Navy for 2 months over 12 years.
Okay. Yeah, so a long time. 12 years. Far out.
Good beginning to working life.
That's half my life, more than half my life. Yeah, right. So the contrast of civilian and military life is stark. Is there a particular memory of your time in the ADF that highlights the difference?
One of the deployments that I did was to an exercise called RIMPAC, and we had 40 days at sea for that exercise without a break. Working hours were 16 to 18 hours a day, and if you were at action stations, that could be 24 hours. And what was really important at that point in time was understanding that your mate had your back.
Yeah.
And also being able to stand up and say, yeah, I've got yours too. Yeah. And that was what sea life was all about. You spent your time exercising to be very good at what you did, and everyone did that.
Okay, so 40 days, it's very hectic. Was that not only physically tiring, but mentally tiring?
Absolutely. It made for some really good runs ashore in Hawaii. So
yeah.
Everyone letting off steam because there was a lot bottled up.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's how life at sea is.
Yeah, right. And did you travel just with Australian soldiers, Australian sailors to Hawaii, or was it with...
No, we had, I think there were 5 different navies in that exercise. So the Brits, the New Zealanders, certainly the Americans, and I think the Canadians were in that exercise too.
And do you still keep in touch with those other soldiers now?
All of my best friends are Navy.
Yeah.
I see them, and when we see them and when we meet, the conversation starts from where it left off.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's awesome, yeah. So I'm curious about how your service changed you as a person.
It really gave you a real theme of responsibility. You were actually doing a job that was important, and that in turn boosted self-confidence and gave you the attitude that you could do whatever you wanted to do in life.
Okay. Yeah, wow. So it's fair to say that civilians genuinely don't understand what our veterans sacrificed to serve their country. What are your thoughts about that?
I wrote a will at 16. I don't think many civilians do that.
Yeah.
And nobody knows what's around the corner. And the importance of the Australian military is you can't put into words. Yeah. I don't think a lot of civilians get that. The ones that have family that have served often do because they're told the stories, but I think for the most part they don't get it.
So you're coming back into society, did you feel like it was different to how you'd be acting in the Navy?
I learned very quickly that no one had your back, and you had to be responsible for everything you did, and that was the grounding that the military gave.
So as a 27-year-old leaving the Navy after 12 years of life, and you're with these boys and girls that have always got your back, and then moving into a society where you're on your own, was that tough?
Yeah, I can remember spending a lot of time working because that was the only solace, and it was a case of do that or you didn't get on.
So could you, following on from this, how you coped with your transition out of the military?
Totally different way of thinking. I had my own small business as a courier, and I just found that I really had to get on and do the work.
I'm curious about a theme that's apparent. Vets serve their country and often also find other ways to serve people in need back in civilian life.
Yes. We seem to spend a lot of time helping others. Not that we are helpless or need to help someone, but we're always in a position to stand up and be counted and do the right thing.
And to finish this off, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Oh, I think if I had my time over again, I would do it all over again.
Yeah, right.
Maybe tweak
a couple of things.
Maybe not do the bad decisions, but
yeah.
No, it was one of the things that made me, and I look back on it fondly.
Ray, Bennie, thank you so much for allowing me to interview today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Kalahni Filby. I'm a Year 10 student from St Paul's Catholic College, Manly. Today I will be talking with Army and Vietnam veteran Robert Dodds, who has volunteered to share his story with us today. Before we begin, I would like to say thank you, Robert, for your service to Australia, and thank you for lending your time to let me speak with you today.
You're welcome.
I'd like to start off with asking, what age were you and what branch of the Australian Defence Force did you serve with?
Well, I started way back when I was 16 by joining the reserve forces. Worked my way through reserve forces. If we go then on to, I joined the Army when I was 21, the regular Army, and put in 15 years.
And what branch did you serve with?
I served with the tanks first, or the armoured
Yeah.
guys, as they say, the tanks. I wanted to go to Vietnam with the tanks, but National Service took over, and every Nasho wanted to be a tank driver, so
Yeah.
I was training them, but I couldn't get a go. So I changed corps. I went into the infantry corps.
Wow.
And never looked back.
Wow.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, so you volunteered, didn't you? So you were a
I
volunteer?
volunteered, yes. I've had 6 generations in front of me. Or,
Yeah.
sorry, 5. I was the 6th.
Yeah.
So,
that's amazing.
and the younger son also had joined the
Yeah.
army and went up north.
What motivated you to join the army? Of course. So was it just because generations before you went, or was it you wanted to go as well?
Both of those. Mainly you could say that, of course, it was other generations were in front of me.
Yeah.
But also I believed in the cause at the time. There was a thing called the domino effect. And we used to get that sort of taught to us every week, that it was going to be the domino effect, something similar to what the Japanese did when they worked down the Malaya Peninsula. So we were told the same thing, and I just felt a proud Australian that I wanted to go and serve for my country.
Yeah. So what jobs or roles did you service in the army? So obviously infantry.
Infantry, I started out as a private, then worked my way up through telecommunications sort of thing as a radio operator. I got bored with that. I changed over, went back down in rank to a rifleman and worked my way up through that to a section commander, and then took over that and from a platoon commander. So it's you work your way to the top.
Yeah.
That's a part of the joy of being in the military. You have these opportunities, and also what you've got to think while you're learning, you're also earning better money. So.
And what were your thoughts and feelings the first few months you were in Vietnam?
What the hell am I doing here? Sort of, supposed to be the first one. You were brainwashed. The thing that was put in your mind wasn't what when you got over to Vietnam wasn't the same. Like they were all bad, but when you landed in Vietnam, people were coming up and smiling and wanted to shake your hand and welcome you there.
Yeah, so not at all what you thought it was.
No, it wasn't.
Like.
Yes, it was weird.
Yeah.
It took a bit of getting used to. Even to the stage you had to, when you first went out in the bush, an orienteering type of thing. You had to go out and put yourself there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like what they told us. That, as soon as you got off the boat, people would be firing at you.
Yeah.
That was as far from the truth as you can take it. Didn't happen
like
at
it.
all.
Yeah.
Which was interesting.
Yeah. So you serviced in the infantry and with the tanks. Which was your preference?
Infantry.
Why was...
The corps d'esprit and the friendships you make with a whole group of guys is awesome. We have a reunion every 4 years, and it's like I can get on the phone now and ring up. If I was in trouble, I could ring up guys in Queensland.
So just great relationships.
Yes, and they're relationships that don't die.
Yeah.
You've bonded together in a circumstance that civvies would never understand, or other people that haven't been in a war zone such. And it's not only us; it was guys from Korea, Borneo, Second World War guys. You've been through something that's not scripted.
Yeah. Is that why you think you didn't get that type of relationship while you were with the tanks because you didn't get to go to it?
Well, it's different.
Yeah.
You're working with a machine, it controls you.
Yeah.
Where, as they call us grunts, it's, you've got to mould yourself, you've got to help. I'm about as close to you as you're with a mate nearly all the time.
Yeah.
And you work together, you live together.
Able to build those relationships.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And you build it with the whole company.
Yeah.
Then it goes in everyone in the whole battalion. You know people, and you become a big family.
Mm. How long did you serve, and what rank did you achieve?
Well, I got to the rank of sergeant in the end, but
was that after 15 years?
Yeah, I got out. I had enough.
Yeah.
So that's the army had changed, and you get old.
Yeah.
You're not 21 anymore. So
how old were you when you left the army?
Oh, what was I? 20 years after. Too old.
35-ish?
Yes.
Yeah. So you served in Vietnam. Have you thought of going back to visit?
I've been back quite a few times. I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah. The people, once again, we were told they were horrible, they're not.
Yeah.
It's, well, I think I'd mentioned a thing to you.
Yeah, earlier.
I did a trip up there and went out on a boat to Ha Long Bay and met a Vietnamese guy, and when we figured it out and worked it out on maps and that, he was in the same area I was, and would have been trying to kill each other.
Yeah, quite
He
amazing.
now is a very close friend.
Yeah.
We're in a stage where he's made me uncle number 2 up there, and he's uncle number 9. So
yeah,
it's interesting. The people are fantastic.
Yeah.
That's all. Wars are stupid.
Yeah.
It's always the common man down the bottom who suffers, and I'll say it, politicians, if you had a war and if politicians went, we'd never have wars.
Yeah.
And the Vietnamese I know say the same thing. Mm-hmm. And when you're together, both of us were doing a job.
Yeah.
I wanted to be good at mine, I think I was, and he was good at his.
Yeah.
But now we've bonded together.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Yeah. Do you believe that your service changed you as a person?
Yes, yeah. Very disillusioned with the politics, and I won't get over that one.
Yeah.
As a person, yes, you have not a negative outlook. You look at the wrong side of things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard. You ask why. A lot of people said, I've changed, or I had changed. You're very hostile when you come back, because it takes a long time. We had no letdown period.
Yeah.
And when we marched through Sydney, the people didn't appreciate it, so that
hard.
hurts.
Yeah, it was hard.
And it's, even today, some people will say, you're just a whinging Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
You feel like, oh, but you can't.
Yeah. Like, civilians generally don't understand what veterans did experience during their time.
No one could.
Yeah. How does that make you feel as a veteran?
Well, I know it's true. It's when you're living and you see your mates get wiped out, that you'll never get over.
Yeah.
I suffer from PTSD, and I have a thing called flashbacks where I can see your back mind takes over from your front mind.
Yeah.
And I relive the whole, something that was traumatic.
Very hard.
So.
Yeah. So following your transition out of the military, how did you cope getting back to normal civilian life?
Very hard, because I was coming down with, I didn't know it at the time, with cancer and a few other things that were going wrong. I went through a few things that were very hard. I was suffering from post-traumatic stress. I went through a few jobs where I wanted to control the people. They weren't doing the job right. And you still try to treat them
different
as...
environment.
Totally.
Yeah.
We weren't geared up to say yes sir, no sir.
Yeah.
I was used to giving the order and someone doing the job. If they didn't do the job, well, I'd say something, but you can't do that in a civvy street. You've got to...
Yeah.
It's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, completely different. I'm sure you learned many skills during your time in the Australian Defence Force. Are you able to apply those in everyday life?
Well, the skills that I learnt weren't, you know, a soldier's skills is his killing ability.
Yeah.
And you don't want to use that in Civvy Street.
Yeah. Different type of skills.
The other thing is you learn how to hate people by someone telling you, but turn that around so you love the people.
Yeah.
That's up to yourself and talking to your friends and all that to get that across. That's changing that whole thing in your mind from hating and killing to loving and working with the people is a huge problem. I've got it with my younger son at the moment. He is in trouble. So, and I can see I'm reliving my own experiences with my younger son at the moment. He's screaming out for help.
Yeah.
They just say, "Oh, go away, take these tablets and go away."
Yeah.
You know, "Oh, you've got post-traumatic stress." Where just recently one of the medics told him, "Oh, you're just a whinger like your old man." Like it's a wonder Lachlan didn't behead him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a
a
great learning other things. To work with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I got out of the army and set up a painting business where I had a lot of people working for me. I learnt there through the experiences I had how to control and run a business, which was the same thing as army running a section.
Yeah.
So you could say that, but the rest of it, no.
Different type of skills.
Totally different.
There's obviously a theme that's apparent with vets serve their country, and they also often find other ways to help people in need. Have you found that for yourself?
Well, yes. One of the things I love, or I put right up there, I was involved in the Welcome Home Parade we had back in 1988. That stemmed from 5 of us going across to Chicago in '83 to a big Welcome Home Parade in America. 2 of us got together and went to the hotel down at Manly one night and said, "Why can't we do it here in Australia?" We had a lot of problems. We put the idea forward, well, why can't we have a Welcome Home Parade? The RSL told us to shut the door on the way out here in New South Wales. Victoria, the RSL, did exactly the same, told us to get lost. We then went to the Prime Minister of Australia and he sort of laughed his head off and said, "Get out, the people would never want a parade." We had that parade and the people on the steps of the town hall were Bob Hawke and the hierarchy of the RSLs. The thing that disappoints me there, we had a concert after the parade, but the Americans stated and said, "You're going to bring all these veterans out of the woodwork to reunite us all again and happy times and talk and have a few beers and all that. You'll have your parade, but wait until another year and do something, a reunion." And we never had that reunion. I know a lot of veterans who said, "Why didn't we follow it up?"
Yeah.
The government here brought them out and now they've gone back into their shell. And it's sad because the suicide rate at the moment is not something you want to talk about. But that is another problem that I'm too old to fight it all now, so, and it is a big argument and a big fight with governments when you get involved with that.
Yeah. Are there any other thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, just people when one of the things that's so simple, if you see a veteran, you know, and you can tell they are, just say, you know, "Thanks, mate." It's a simple sentence, just thanks. And it makes you feel great.
Yeah, sense of acknowledgement.
Yeah, well, we all do. You do something good at school. It's great when the teacher goes, "Oh, well done, you know, isn't that a fantastic?" Better than saying, "Oh, you're a loser." How it's the same thing how you feel. You know yourself, and also you've been taught the job you're doing is that you're doing your best. You know, and when you get out, you think, "Well, I've achieved, you know, the best I could do." You don't want someone turning around and say, you know, "You're no good."
Especially after you thought and you did such a good job in Vietnam, spent your time, and everyone kind of turns their back.
Well, that's what happens. And you work with guys and all that. Everything was great.
Yeah.
You give it your best shot, but people turn their back and say, no, it was hopeless.
Yeah.
You can see that in anyone. We all like to be praised.
Yeah.
So, or a slap on the back or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Just little things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for spending your time and allowing me to interview you today. I've had an amazing time. I hope that you've also had a good time here. So, thank you very much.
I have. Thanks very much. And it's long overdue. Long overdue.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Harry Hadley and I'm a Year 11 student at St. Luke's Grammar, DY, and I'm talking with Vietnam veteran Michael Noonan. Michael, thank you for your service to Australia and for sharing your story today. I understand that you have military service, in fact one of the first national service conscripts, and I would like to ask you some questions about that service. Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
So what were the origins and reasons of national service in 1965?
The Australian government passed the National Service Act in 1964, which required males of 20 years old to spend 24 continuous months in the army. The purpose was to enable government to have additional soldiers to send to Vietnam conflict. Those to serve would be drawn by ballot, which happened on the 10th of March 1965, and they would be advised if their birth date was drawn in the ballot, and mine was.
Right, yeah. So when did your army service start, and what was the reaction of your parents and friends?
My army service commenced on the 1st of July 1965. My parents were shocked and dismayed because I was an only child, and because they were concerned about me. My friends didn't say much. I think they were a bit shocked as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So what occurred prior to you going to Vietnam?
My basic training was in Puckapunyal, and after approximately around 3 months I came up to Holsworthy, and then I was assigned to the 5th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment.
Yeah, right. So when and where did you arrive in Vietnam to commence your 12 months army service, and what rank did you have?
My rank was private. The 5RA Battalion arrived in Vietnam at a place called Nui Dat, where the base was going to be, on the 24th of May 1965. That day, actually, the first national serviceman was killed, and his name was Private Errol Nowak.
Right. So how did you travel when on patrol?
Mostly at foot, sometimes an APC, armoured personnel carrier, and if we were going to more remote area, it was normally by helicopter to get there and then back.
Right, and what did you carry when you were on patrol?
A backpack with approximately 5 days of rations, sleeping gear, a machete, rifle or machine gun, depending upon what you were given, hand grenades, lots of ammunition, and 2 water bottles.
Yeah, and while you were serving, what was one of your worst experiences there?
One was on the 21st of February 1967. We were travelling in APCs and the lead APC triggered a mine, and when the Major and the Lieutenant plus the medics rushed up to assist the wounded, someone trod on a jumping jack mine, and that caused the instant death or later death of 7 persons. It was unknown how many mines were in the area, so we could not move anywhere till the following morning, and then we had to follow the exact path out that we came in on.
Wow, yeah. So upon leaving the Army service on the 30th of June 1967, how did you cope being back in civilian life?
Well, I didn't come back with any injuries, so that was helpful, but I went back to my employment with the ANZ Bank.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, I think I did have some mental adjustments, and if you heard any loud bang, you had to get used to not trying to get on the ground. And helicopters, of course, have a very distinct sound, so they trigger memories. And just not really being in a state of tension all the time now.
Of course, yeah. Do you think the National Service could be introduced in the future?
Not in the format of 1964. It would be unacceptable to the media and general public, I think. Perhaps a paid volunteer national service for males and females of 1 year may be acceptable, so long as they weren't going to be sent to a conflict zone or a peacekeeping zone overseas. It would, over time, I think, provide backup to the existing military in the event of any future threat to Australia.
Yeah, right. And Michael, final question. Both of my great-grandparents, served in World War I, and my grandparents, when they come back, they said that they wouldn't really talk about their experiences in the war, and they didn't really find out of any of the stories or anything. They had to look at their medals and their official records to actually know what happened. When you came back from service, did you find it useful to talk to people about what had happened, or did you talk with people about what had happened, and did that help you personally?
When I came back, I didn't really discuss it because people didn't really ask me any question, and I didn't want to be like someone that just wanted to tell war stories.
Yeah.
So whilst I was quite happy to say things to people if they asked a question, but it was something that just didn't really happen.
Yeah, right. Do you think that would be different today for people if any ex-servicemen would come back today? Would you reckon it's less of a taboo now, or?
Well, it's hard to say. I guess it depends on the individuals and the family and stuff.
Yeah,
I couldn't comment.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. It's been an honour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ben Blakeney and I'm a member at Freshwater Surf Club. Today I'm going to be interviewing Vietnam War veteran Sean Roud. Sean, firstly I'd like to thank you for your service for Australia and willingness to share your story.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Sean, did you volunteer to serve or were you conscripted?
I was conscripted, yeah.
Conscripted. What age and year was that?
A young 20 and in 1970, mid-1970.
Right, so you were conscripted for the Vietnam War. How did your family and friends feel knowing you were going off to war?
Mum was very upset, and Dad, he was a World War II veteran, Radcliffe. He was nervous but supportive. My friends, most of them were happy that it was me and not them, and they threw a big party, and yeah, it was a big night.
Fair enough. Could you tell me about your first 3 months or so of your time at war?
Okay, we had to go to an induction centre in Sydney, and there was a whole group of us were inducted, signed some papers, had some needles, and then we were put on a bus. We travelled down to a place at Wagga Wagga, the Kapooka Army training camp, for 10 weeks of basic training, which I enjoyed because a couple of times I got to play rugby on the Saturdays. And it was true, and because nobody else, a lot of them were AFL players, and the Army only has rugby teams. So we done the 10 weeks training there, and then a group of us was selected to be deployed to a battalion we didn't know of, but because of secrecy, that we were going to deploy to Vietnam, South Vietnam, for the war. So instead of going on a 10 weeks infantry training course up at Singleton, we were on a 7-week intensive infantry training course. Fast track, no time off. Then we flew to Canungra in Queensland, and we spent 3 weeks there in a jungle training course, which I absolutely love. You had to run everywhere. You had to run to the toilet with your backpack on. You run to dinner and to lunch, and I was so fit coming out of there. Little things I remember, like they taught you how to strip a rifle, all your weapons, at night time with blindfolds on.
Wow.
And it became, it saved us a couple of times actually. Well, it didn't save us, but it was very handy a couple of times when you had a problem with your rifle in the jungle. After that, they gave us a couple of days off, about 4 or 5. I went back to Sydney, said hello to the folks, and then we travelled to Adelaide, Woodside, to a battalion that was ready to deploy to Vietnam.
Sounds very busy.
Yeah, it was. I was a busy
first
3 months, yeah, flat out.
Yeah, fair enough. So Sean, what unit did you serve with? What was your job? And what year did you go to Vietnam?
I joined the 3rd Battalion. We only found out we were joining the 3rd Battalion because they were understaffed. They needed reinforcements before they sailed off to Vietnam. So there was a group, it was about 30 or 40. We joined them, and I joined them as a rifleman, and that was in late 1970.
Yep. All right. So I'm interested in how the Army processes work into getting all its men and equipment to the war zones.
Good question. That's fascinating, actually. Here is 800 men. You've got to get to point A to point B in a bit of time with security all around it. So they bust the whole battalion by companies from Woodside, which is in the Adelaide Hills, down to Port Adelaide, where we boarded the former aircraft carrier Sydney, and then got all the equipment on board, all the 800 soldiers, and I think there might have been 300 sailors on board. Then we sailed off with Navy escorts to Vung Tau in South Vietnam. I enjoyed that because it was my first cruise, ocean cruise.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have to pay for it. The food was good. You exercised on the deck, the aircraft carrier managing exercising on the deck there. So we exercised every day. We even had live fire practicing off the deck. The escort ships would lay particular objects in the ocean, and we would see how good we were with a rifle. At night time it was interesting. Every night, it was a tradition in the Navy, I didn't know it, so I would have joined the Navy. They issued you with large can of Foster's beer, and you had to stand in line in the flight deck. They would call your name, you would have to tick it off or sign it, and then they open the can up and you get this big can to have a beer that night. Even some of the guys that even didn't drink or got seasick, we encouraged to stand in the line, and then we get their supply of beer. So some nights you'd have a little bit of a party of 4 or 5 cans.
That's all right then, isn't it?
Yeah, that was good until we got to Vietnam, and then it all got serious. The cruise was over, and we had to start thinking of how we're going to get home.
Yeah. In Vietnam, where were you based and what was your first few months like?
Okay, we're based at a place called Nui Dat, which is the Australian Task Force headquarters. All the battalions there and the armour and all the rest of it, the SAS regiment. So off the aircraft carrier, US Chinook helicopters, really large helicopters, took a whole platoon at a time to fly to Nui Dat, and we were based there. We were there only about 2 days, and the whole battalion deployed into the jungle on a so-called in-jungle training exercise. It was supposed to last for a week, but unfortunately on the second night we were out in the jungle. This is only 4 days after we were in Vietnam. Second night out, D Company made contact with the enemy, and it was the first enemy killed by the battalion. But the following night, D Company became under a very large attack, and unfortunately for us, we lost our first 2 soldiers, an officer, a junior officer, and an infantryman, and that was in 4 days of being in Vietnam. So that 1 week training, in jungle training, turned into a major operation, and we were out in the jungle for 7 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. We didn't realise it was the norm. It wasn't the norm, but so the battalion then rotated the companies back to to Nui Dat, and they continued that on for the rest of the time that we're in Vietnam.
Right, so it sounds like something you would have been quite nervous for, and what you thought was going to be one thing changed quite quickly.
Yeah, it was interesting getting off a cruise ship, Her Majesty's Australian ship Sydney, and then in 2 days or 3 days you've lost 2 guys from your battalion already, so it was a wake-up call. And yeah, the guys that went before me, I like to make this statement, the guys that went before me, before our battalion, this was the second tour of the 3rd Battalion, the guys that went before me had much harder than we did, much harder, and we all knew the war was winding down because the Americans wanted to get out. We didn't know that the Americans weren't fully supporting the South Vietnamese army. As a matter of fact, a week before we got there, the South Vietnamese invaded into Laos with 17,000 men, with no American support except for air, and half of those 17,000 men were killed, wounded or captured. And that was a week before we got there, so the war was still on, and the South Vietnamese and the North Vietnamese paid a heavy price.
Yeah, right. Wow, it's very different to what it sounds like. During your service, what family milestones did you miss?
Being 20 when I joined the army, most of us turned 21, or the conscripts turned 21 in Vietnam. I think there were 63,000 guys that were conscripted. Of that 63,000 or so, 15,500 deployed to Vietnam over the 10 years or whatever it was of the war. And I remember distinctly one night my dad, who was a veteran of World War II, rang Canberra to insist that they get a message to me to wish me 21st birthday.
Wow, that's nice.
So I was in the jungle on a machine gun. We're at night time, and the boss found me because we have cleaned the garbage or the foliage off the jungle, so you can come and talk to different guys and be at station. And he came and kicked me, and he says, "Roud." I said, "Yes, boss." He says, "Happy birthday from your dad," and gave me a tin of chocolate.
Yeah,
and I've still got that tin of chocolate now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You going to eat it anytime soon, do you think?
Another 20 years, maybe today. Who knows?
Maybe, who knows? Would you or have you considered going back to Vietnam to visit?
I did. It took me a while. A friend of mine married a Vietnamese girl. He built a home out at Hanoi, outside of Hanoi, and so he kept on pounding me, come. So I ended up going, stayed 4 weeks. I enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. It took a couple of things off my back. North Vietnam was quite strange. There wasn't too many old men there, I noticed. Most of them were killed in the war. And South Vietnam or Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon I just loved it. We even went back to the army camp at Nui Dat
where I served. So yes, I've been back. Yeah.
Could you please share how you cope with your transition out of the military?
It's interesting. Transition for me didn't exist, and I'm still thinking that there is issues with it these days. I was told to report to Victoria Barracks. I had to sign a document, and they said goodbye. And then next 2 weeks later, I'm back at my old job, and being introduced to the staff there. The problem was that we didn't get the increases in the wages that the guys did that stayed for some reason. One guy my boss introduced me, remember Sean? And he said to me, oh, you've been on holidays.
Oh.
And I've been away for 2 years. So that was my transition from the army to the civilian life.
Right, so it was quick and abrupt, kind of
Yeah,
get back into it, and good luck.
Yeah, good luck, see you later.
Wow. Sean, you're still very involved in various return services events and remembrance events. What organisations are these with?
I'm been heavily involved in a lot of organisations. Soldiers Avenue, just down the road here, stakeholders group, we're very involved in that. I'm very privileged to be the president of Harbour Diggers RSL sub-branch. I'm a life member of the Manly Rugby Club after 40 years of dedicated work there, but I loved it. It kept my mind in the game, and a lot of vets do volunteer for special projects to get back into civilian life and to give back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Sean, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I'm really concerned about the veterans today. A lot of them have served, they're professionals, they come home, and there's too many suicides. I only heard last night that the suicide rate just this year, 2020, was 41 have died, suicide this year. In the last 2 weeks, I learnt last night that 6 have committed suicide. Why? So I know all the organisations in Australia should do better for these veterans, and the RSL needs to pick up the game, and I'm dedicated to doing that over the next few years. But we really do need a royal commission into these. It just cannot go on. So that's all I would like to say at this stage, Ben.
That's fair enough. Sean Roud, thank you for your time and allow me to interview and hear about your experiences.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm a member of Freshwater Surf Life Saving Club, and today I'm talking with Navy veteran Lieutenant Commander Tamara Sloper-Harding. Welcome, Tamara. Thank you for your service to Australia, and thank you for letting me interview you today.
Thanks, Nat. It's really good to be here.
So, Tamara, what age were you when you commenced your service in the Australian Navy?
I joined the Navy when I was 18, and I'd known I was going to join since I was about 15, and I got a scholarship when I was in year 10 at school. So it was in the plans always.
Yeah. I hear you have a family involvement in the Navy?
Yeah, family history of Navy and military involvement goes quite a long way back. My grandfather, on my mum's side, he was in the Navy and he was a supply officer. And then my father was also in the Navy. He was a warfare officer and did a lot of service overseas.
Okay, wow, gosh.
Yeah.
And did you volunteer or were you conscripted?
I was a volunteer. We didn't have conscripts when I was young, back in the 80s. Yeah, so I volunteered, but at the time Australia was in a very peaceful era and we didn't have any conflicts overseas. So when I volunteered, I never really imagined that I would have to go to war.
Okay, wow. So that must have been quite a shock.
It was, yeah. But it was kind of fulfilling because it was what we joined up to do, you know, go and save people, make peace in a country, that sort of thing.
Yeah, wow. And what was your family reactions like? Were they surprised? Were they shocked, scared, nervous?
There was a bit of anxiety for my mum with me going into the military because she'd been a Navy wife for a very long time and a Navy daughter, and so she'd grown up with the military as part of her life too, so she was a bit nervous about what it would be like for me in a man's world as it was back in the 1980s.
Yeah. And what motivated you to join the Navy?
I had this really strong desire to make a difference in the world. And I didn't know what capacity that would be in, but I wanted to really help people, change lives, create peace. Sometimes a bit of the idealistic teenage ideas about saving people and all of that, but I wanted to serve my country as well. The military is something I was really proud of.
Wow, gosh. And so you describe yourself as a peacemaker. What does that mean to you?
Well, I always think about the Defence Force as being here as a protective measure so that we do bring peace about. And so for me, my deployments were very much to help other people, especially overseas, to bring peace to a country, to stop women and children suffering in war. I think that's where our strength lies.
After your first few months of service, how did you feel about your Navy career?
When I first joined the Navy, it was all still pretty much a big adventure. I'd spent a year at the Defence Academy and then that wasn't really Navy life for me. So my real Navy life began at HMAS Creswell in Jervis Bay, which is the most beautiful part of Australia, and we spent a lot of time out on the water, and the historic feelings of that naval base just make you really feel part of something bigger than yourself. It was a wonderful time to be joining the Navy. Yeah.
And was that experience what you expected, or was it different?
That was exactly what I expected down at the Naval College. And then getting to go to sea for training crews and spending a lot of time after our study hours out on the boats and things, that was exactly what I expected, and it was fantastic. I'd say it was probably the best year of my life.
Yeah. Oh, wow, gosh. And Tamara, as a female on board male-dominated ships, did you have any issues and how did you cope?
Well, remembering that I went to sea back in the late 80s, early 90s, so it was unusual then to have women at sea. So it was very much a teething stage for the Navy, and it was an adventure. I certainly loved the feeling of being at sea, and particularly loved the travel, getting to see different parts of the world. I think it's a real privilege to be able to do that, and I loved being on a ship, you know, sleeping in a cabin. We still had our own bathrooms and things like that. So it wasn't really tough lifestyle-wise. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And how long did you serve and what rank did you achieve?
I was in the Navy, the permanent Navy, for nearly 19 years, 18 and a half years. And I was a Lieutenant Commander when I transferred to the reserves.
And the contrast of civilian and military life is very stark. Is there a particular memory of your time in the ADF that highlights these differences?
I think one of the things I miss about the ADF the most is that feeling of comradeship, of mateship, and being part of a team, particularly as a woman. So I left when I was having my children. So I had 4 children under 5 at one stage, and the transition to being a stay-at-home mother was very difficult, having been in a team environment for all that time. I found it very lonely, particularly other mothers didn't really understand the lifestyle that I'd had, and I really missed the guys that I worked with. It was pretty hard.
Yeah. And do you think in your time since leaving the Navy, do you think you've managed to connect with people that sort of can share that same memory and other women that can understand your experiences too?
I've kept in touch with a lot of my veteran friends, and I'm pretty active in the veteran space and within the RSL. So staying connected with veterans is really important to me because we can share those memories. But I've also found that by explaining to my civilian friends what it was like, and they're keen to hear about that part of Australia's history and what the Defence Force does, so they get a bit of an insight into what it was like for me as a woman serving in the military.
I'm curious about how your service changed you as a person.
I think my service really did change me as a person in that I discovered I could do a lot more than I always thought I could, and I could survive a lot more challenges and face the realities of the world, harsh as they are. I also found that anyone can make a difference in the world and really affect other people's lives and make peace and make things better and safer for other people. It was kind of empowering as a human to think that you can touch people's lives like that and change their future and make things better.
Yeah. And joining at such a young age, did you find that growing up so quickly, did you find that a challenge or did you feel supported? How did you go about that process?
There were many challenges in the 1980s, particularly for women in the military, but we took that on, you know, with full force, and it was enjoyable and a great sense of achievement to come through that. So I loved the new experiences and just the unusual things that we got to do, yeah.
Okay. Is it fair to say civilians generally don't understand what our veterans' sacrifice is to serve the country? What are your thoughts about that?
I think civilians are getting a better idea of what veterans have gone through and what they give up for peace and for the service of our country. I think it's really great that in our schools the children are so much more aware of the meaning behind Anzac and our sense of duty towards the country. It seems to have been growing in the last few years, the understanding in the civilian community about what it's like for veterans, and the appreciation of veterans has increased. I still think there's a long way to go as far as education to explain how veterans can transition back into the normal community and be accepted, but we've come a long way in the last couple of years.
Okay, and on that note, I understand that you're quite involved in the schools and keeping that Anzac spirit alive. Can you explain what exactly you do in the programs that you run?
Okay. Here on the Northern Beaches, I'm really fortunate that I often get asked to come and speak at schools for Remembrance Day, Anzac Day and careers expos. And I have the chance to talk to the students about the meaning of our military traditions and the importance that cultural thing is for all of us as Australians. And what I love to see is that the kids really take that up. And I found about 10 years ago I was speaking at a primary school in Avalon, and the children were asking me all kinds of questions, particularly the little boys, like about military operations and war. And I steered the conversation back to peacemaking and peacekeeping, and then we got to talk about East Timor and where I served, and the children were so enthralled with the history and the Australians' involvement from World War II right up to now with this country that's only an hour away from us, that it created such an energy that we ended up linking that school with a school over there, and a charity was born from that one Anzac Day presentation. Wow. So it was just really energising for me to see that our young people are so interested in our military, in our history, and what we can do in the world to help others.
That's amazing. It really is. It's great to see that you have such a positive and constructive role in keeping that Anzac spirit going and teaching the younger generations about their place in the world and how they can help others. I think that's really inspirational.
Thank you. But I think it's important too, because this younger generation are the ones that are going to be carrying on the spirit of Anzac and the history and keeping it all alive within our communities. So it's really important.
Absolutely. And could you please share how you coped with your transition out of the military?
I found my transition from the military to civilian life quite a challenge. I still don't feel like I fit into the normal civilian world very well. Hence, I tend to cling to the veteran culture and social scene as well through the RSL. It's very hard to live a normal life after you've witnessed things that happen in war. I know, like, I suffer from PTSD, and so every day things come up that trigger memories from my service, and it's a challenge to try and be a parent and an active member of a normal community and deal with those sort of issues. So transition has been really difficult, but I think as our community is becoming more aware of veterans and veterans issues, it's getting easier.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a juggling act.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so I hear you have a furry little friend that is going to help you out a little bit with that?
Yes, I'm in the process of getting my dog approved as a PTSD support dog. It's a bit challenging. She's a very active little puppy at the moment, but it's a new program, and she should be able to calm me when I get over anxious or things like that. So we'll see how it goes. But I know veterans have found a lot of good come out of support dogs.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. And have you been back to visit Timor, and what's your thoughts on Timor today?
It's really interesting because I go back to visit Timor twice a year, usually, except for this year with COVID. And I have found being back in the country that I served, it helps with my PTSD because I feel like I haven't abandoned them. We ended up, as a result of that talk at the primary school, setting up a charity, and we do a lot of aid work in a village that this area of the Northern Beaches is linked to. We are very much run by the locals in the village as to what our programs are. They ask us for what help they need. And I think it's really important because Australia promised to help Timor after World War II when the Timorese sheltered our troops from the Japanese. And then we've let them down time and time again. In the 70s when they're invaded, we did nothing. So for me, it eases some of the guilt of that by going back and helping. And I've become very close to the villagers, and we spend quite a long time each year over there taking volunteers from the Northern Beaches. A lot of the surf clubs are involved, and we do CPR training in the village and at the schools. It's just incredible. There's about 8 schools on the Northern Beaches now involved, and it's great to see these young people wanting to make a difference in the world. And none of that would have happened if I hadn't been in the military. So yeah, I think it's really fortunate.
And do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share?
I look back on my military career, and there were lots of hard times, but far more positive has come out of it for me, for my family, and for my community. And to be able to fulfill the promises and live my dreams and know that my service made a difference to people, to people's lives and livelihoods, and that is really something to treasure in your heart. The fact that by having served in Timor in 1999 during their fight for independence, at such a pivotal time in our history as 2 countries in friendship, that has changed my life, and I don't know where I'd be without that service now. And the fact that the bond goes on and gets stronger every year. All my family's been over there to the village with me, and I take lots of people from our community over, and the difference we're making in that village is incredible. But we've learnt so much from them. Those people, the Timorese, are the most resilient people I have ever met, and the way that they forgive their oppressors in order to move forward in a positive way is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. If only we could all be like that. So I've learned a lot from them, a lot from their courage, and I think I'm very privileged to be involved in their lives in Soybata.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Tamara, and thank you for your service. And
it's been really great talking to you, Nat. Thanks for chatting to me today. And it's really great to see young people here in our community still wanting to know about what it's like in the military and what our service meant to us. So thank you for having me.
James Griffin. I'm the State Member for Manly and Parliamentary Secretary for Veterans in New South Wales. And today I've got the opportunity to speak to Wal Edwards OAM. Wal's turning 104 this November, and he's got a rich history and a story that most of us could simply dream of. I want to thank the Department of Veterans Affairs for providing this funding to enable us to tell the story of Wal and other veterans across the Northern Beaches.
Well, I happened to be a little bit older than most people. On the 3rd of September 1939, I happened to be 23 years old. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh boy, this is mad, this Hitler and what he's up to and whatnot, and where's this going to end? Mm. And from then on, you want to know when I was first called up, because it was 3 years after that. You see, I came from a very poor family, lived in Newcastle, Hamilton, and we went through the Great Depression, and where a lot of people had no money. They were suffering that much that I had to leave school after doing the intermediate certificate and come down to Manly to live. You can think about that. Yeah. That's coming from hell to heaven on earth.
Well, a lot of people will
and I was wondering what it struck.
No, as a member for Manly, I share your view. You did come to heaven.
That's right.
It's a great place to live. And
it is.
How different was it back then when you got here?
Oh yes, it was fantastic because I saw the surf and then I saw the pool, and don't forget I was only about a bit over 15 then. I thought, this is great. And they used to have a circus in Gilbert Park. Yeah. And then there was Bert's milk bar there, and wow. You could go up and down the Corso, you know, and there wouldn't be too many people there. Yeah. But I used to go on the surf at the weekend, get all burnt up, and seeing I'm fairly fair, I got burned up. But then next week, I'd get over the peeling and go back again, have another go. So that was great. And then I happened to get a job at McGuire's, the grocers in the Corso. I don't know whether you remember them or not.
No.
Ah, dear. And I was the boy. I had my own bicycle, and if Manly Hospital ran out of anything, the boy would take it up. And I ended up taking £70 a bag of sugar up on handlebars of my bike one day.
So you're getting
you can imagine that.
Getting up Darley Road on a bike with...
Yeah, but at that age, yeah. And you know what, I got 18 nights a week for that. And I got the sack 3 years afterwards because they had to pay me £2 and sixpence.
Oh no!
But they did me a great turn.
Yep.
Because I thought, well, here we are in a great depression here. I got the sack. I went up to Waters Cash and Carry and I said, hey, Mr. Curry, do you want to make more money? He said, everyone does, son, these days. I said, would you give me 10% if I bring in orders for you and you deliver them? He said, yes. And that, within about 3 or 4 weeks, I was earning twice as much as what I was earning at McGuire. So I went back to Aussie Rear, and I said, thanks for giving me the sack. He said, why? I said, I've learned a lesson. I'll never ever work for a boss again in my life. I haven't.
Here we go. Well, so was it that bad back then? I mean, I think one of the amazing elements of being able to talk to you is to really get an appreciation and an understanding of how bad things were. I mean, we can read about it in a history book.
They were tough, and I'm very sad to think of what's going on now with this COVID-19 and the number of people that are losing their loved ones. What for? Why? And the trouble is, it's just around the corner. You never know who's going to get it, do you?
Do you feel any parallels between how people and communities came together and supported one another during war or depression, and at the same time today with COVID? Are there any similarities at all that you see?
Well, yes. It's getting to a stage where people do care what's going on. They do, and they want to contribute, and that's good.
And that's very much what your life has been about, service in many different forms.
Yes, that's it. I mean, after all, I did join Rotary in 1965, and I'm still in it. And that the motto is service of ourself. You know all about that.
Yes, yes.
And each year we have the Christmas tree of joy in St Ives, and there's a number of nursing homes and hospitals and war vets that I personally visit and get their names, their age, and what they like for Christmas. Put it down the card, and the public, we educate them over the years, and they look forward to it, and they contribute and buy the presents.
That's wonderful.
And then my son and I deliver it in his truck.
And that's just a small part of the work you've done as a welfare officer for veterans in our community.
Yes, I mean, well, the reason I was determined to do something really positive and volunteered to be the welfare officer Harbour Diggers, I'd gone through a lot of grieving in my lifetime and losing loved ones. I lost a son who was 28 and a grandson at 38, and a wife at later on, and that you know, it makes you wonder, you know, how much do you have to go through in life? And I thought, well, how can I contribute? And I thought, well, now I know. What about the men that served in World War II, in Vietnam, and all these other places? And, you know, it's sad when they come back from being in the services to get back into civilian life, and they're not the same men. I'm going to help them.
Yep, and you've done that.
Well, I showed you the records.
Yep.
There's hundreds there. You've seen their names. You've seen the ones that died on there.
Yep.
Well, someone has to always be doing this, and I recommend that everyone should think about it every day of their life. Get up in the morning, get hate and anger out of their heart, stop worrying about yourself, because there's always someone worse off you down the street, and you can go and pick them up, can't you?
Yep.
You can even help someone going up and down the Corso if he
good advice.
Needs help.
You mentioned the Vietnam War and the Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
What was your observation? Because that was a really difficult time when they came back and weren't really respected.
Yeah, they weren't recognised enough. But we do. We do.
And did you recall having various? I mean, how did you feel given your service and then seeing these people come back from Vietnam, and there was a lot of confusion about why they were there and what was going on. But do you feel now, decades on, that, and I certainly do, that there's a lot better understanding and appreciation of what that conflict was about, and a lot more respect for our veterans?
Oh, well, Look at the ones coming from Afghanistan too. Look how long they've been tied up to it. Well, we often wonder, when is all this going to end? And when are the ex-servicemen going to be recognised as a human being? For them coming back, I mean, people in civilian life, they cannot realise what it's like, because you've only got to be in it for a very small time to know, hey, I'm not in charge of anything. I can't do anything. I'm subject to someone else giving me orders. And I'm used to my own decisions in life, and someone else is telling me what to do. You're joking. When I did not join up, I was called up. At the time, I had 2 children. I was 26. One was 2, one was 3. And I thought, oh God, I'm called up from this. Here I am. I went through the Great Depression. I worked hard. I own this house, and I own the house next door, and I feel as though I'm secure in life. I made it.
Yep.
And here I am. I'm called up to serve the country, which you know, someone has to. But for me, it seems, you know, it's a bit unusual to earn something like 6 shillings a day they're talking about. When I can earn plenty of money outside.
Yep.
But see, that happened, but then I changed my mind. You know what changed it?
What?
Okay, the Japs came into our harbour and started mucking up. That was about a month after I was in the army. I thought, oh, hey, I'm not going to be called a choco now. I joined the AIF.
So it was that moment.
That moment.
The mini subs came into the harbour, and
yes,
you know. So that prompted you to say, right, enough's enough, and off you went.
Yeah.
And had to say essentially goodbye to your 2-year-old and
yeah,
or you had
2 and 3-year-old.
Yeah. That must have been a very difficult decision to.
Well, it wasn't a decision of mine. I was called up. We had to go in then.
And then, so that war then takes place. How did you feel when it was all over?
Well, I felt, oh dear, well at last I can start living again like a normal human being. But I felt as though, you know, nobody seemed to care too much about whether you had been a soldier or whether you know, were just living an ordinary life. So I wandered around and was thinking about what I'll do and what I won't do, and I sold the 2 houses I had in Leichhardt, and I built another one in Lane Cove, and I was there for a few years. Not many years there, but then I was asked by manager of a tannery, his name was Bill Duck, he said, well, I see what you're doing to your place there, you've got an ice garden and everything, you're a good worker. He said, well, I'd like to go into partnership with you in a dairy farm. I said, dairy farm? I said, look, I've been used to sleeping on the land, I love the land. I said, I've been living in tents for 4 years, you know, and all of this. Well, I think it's a good idea too. So we went up and down the country, and we found a place down in 200 acres down at outside of Cabargo, at Coolagolite.
Yep.
And there was 56 milking cows, and because I had anything to do with a cow, but now I love cows. I can look them in the eye and say, oh, you're beautiful.
So you go from no experience with cows or dairy farming to your mate getting in touch and saying, right, let's do this.
That's right, but what about this though?
Yeah.
We hadn't been there for very long and the machines broke down. So you can imagine milking 56 cows between the two of you twice a day.
So was there anything that you could reach inside yourself and that you took from your service in the army that helped you when the machines broke down, even just being resilient?
Oh yes, yeah.
About thinking, look, I've got to get the job done.
You just accept it. That's the thing. Whatever happens in life from then on, you just accept it and say, well, I'm not in charge of anything.
Yep.
And but then I didn't last too long doing that. I was doing the pasture improvement in a Ferguson tractor. Well, you know, if you go up a little bit of incline like that, you can go back like that. Well, if you're experienced anyway.
Yeah.
But I got the job done, fertilising the paddocks, and Bill was he was mending the fences and putting new fences up. And we improved the property so much, we entered the dairy competitions for the South Coast and we won it.
Wow, there you go. And how long after setting it up was that? A couple of years?
That was the next year.
Wow.
Anyway, I sort of sold out to Bill. I thought, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life.
Yep, moved on.
And I wandered around and went to various places and did other various things, and I thought about real estate, and I did. I got a job with Austin Brummer. He had been a prisoner of war, and he had a business in Epping, and he wanted someone to help him. And I helped him so much that I sold 7 houses in one day.
Wow.
An accumulation of people that I'd shown houses to. But that went on a bit. Austin had married a lady who had a grown-up family and was sending them to boarding schools and things like that, and he had to make money to keep her going.
Expensive, yeah.
But he was a nervous wreck. And we opened a shop at the Epping station, and he was in the house. And one day his wife phoned me and she said, oh, well, come down quickly. Austin has cut his wrists. So I raced down there, and Austin was in the shower with an empty Scotch bottle and a bottle of pills. And he was dead then.
Gee.
Blood all over the place, so I rang the police and the ambulance, and that was that. But then I was with her for 3 or 4 weeks, and I thought, well, there's no future in this, and it's sad.
You mentioned he was a person of war. Was he, do you think, in hindsight, that was post-traumatic stress? The reason why he took his own life, do you think that was because he went to war?
Yes, he stressed from that, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And
then he was a nervous wreck because of that, and it compounded when he needed money.
So I would like to hope that we've learnt a lot of lessons from the mistakes of the past, and not diagnosing Austin because he went to war and helping him transition out of...
Oh, no, that's very sad.
You know,
very sad.
So I hope...
But see, the thing is this, there are still people who have come back from after serving in the forces who are nervous wrecks. I know there's one man, he lived in Balgowlah here, and he had been called up, and he was in New Guinea, and he was facing these Japs there. He was telling me about it, about how nervous he still was. And his mate got killed alongside of him, and he still had, you know, he'd wake up during the night screaming. Well, you know, when I start hearing his stories and whatnot, you think of all the other people who've gone through it during the other areas of war.
And did you experience many of them with your work at the Diggers when you were acting as welfare officer there? Obviously, you would have seen similar.
Oh, yes, well, I would see them, and I'd go and see them in war vets, you know.
Up at Kalahni?
Yes. Yeah. They are well looked after there. That's very good.
No, they do a good job.
Oh yes, all the different houses and well, I officiated for the RSL part of the funeral for Meg's Madigan, and Meg had been instrumental in creating Harbour Diggers. Anyhow. But then over the years I thought, well, I got to stick to this job, and I have.
Yeah, you certainly have.
Full stop.
Certainly have.
And then, as far as the ones that needed help, and with Department of Veteran Affairs, I told you about that before, how I represented them and worked hard on a number of them, and the files are sometimes that thick, you know, that I've got in the cupboard.
Yeah, well, I'm sure their families and...
They have been cooperative with me.
Yep.
Department.
Good.
So it's praiseworthy that we do get help when we work hard enough to convince them.
Good, good. So what about some, if you had three tips for people that want to live a long and fulfilled life, what would they be? What now that you're, you know, not far off your 104th birthday, what are the three things that people can take from your knowledge to give themselves a fulfilled life?
Well, my tips are this: to have a happy life, you must always get hate and anger right out of your heart, because it only comes back on you anyway. You think about it, how terrible you feel if you hate somebody or something and you're angry about something. You only feel bad yourself after it. You don't feel good. You think about it. And to get that way that you want to think about. When you get up in the morning, what do you think about? Think about somebody else that's worse off than you. But don't only think about them. Give them a call on the phone. Go and see them. Ask them how well they are. Go and help them. If they're sick, go and visit them in the hospital. And it's no good thinking about these things. Act on it. Anyone can think, but you must act, and then you will be rewarded in your heart. So just think about those words: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. I haven't got any of those, but I think about it and I try and act. Well, action's the word. Get out and do it. Good luck to you. God bless you.
Well, hello again. My name is Sean Roud. I'm the president here at Harbour Diggers RSL sub-branch. Just to wrap up, I hope you've enjoyed or found at least interesting the stories of the veterans here as we salute their service. I'll introduce Wal Edwards, OAM, who has had a long distinguished service outside the military and also in the military. And I just asked, well, how you going, mate? You've enjoyed the day?
Pretty good, thanks, Sean.
That's the way. Just a question. I'm concerned, and we are all concerned about the terrible rate of suicide in our armed forces.
And so I am too.
Oh, thanks, mate. It's a worrying, and the organisations should be stepping up and doing more. Just in the last week, I've heard 2 weeks, 6 guys or 6 people have committed suicide. What's your thoughts on that, and how long do you think it can go on?
Sean, I just don't know. It's so sad to think that so many fellows come back from whatever war is on and they're just forgotten. And that's the sad part. And to get readjusted into civilian life after being under that sort of a life, well, nobody knows. Nobody knows what each individual has suffered. And I am terribly sad about the neglect that has been from generally, people don't know. They don't know what they've gone through.
Yeah.
But they need help all the time.
Okay. Well, you're turning 105 shortly, and I believe you're probably the longest serving veteran on the Northern Beaches, if not in New South Wales, from World War II. You continue to serve in many capacities long after you served. What drives you to continue to serve and give back to the community?
Because I have it in my heart, the sadness. And I just want to reach out to those people that are far worse off than me in my present physical condition. Fortunately, I've got my marbles. I don't have Alzheimer's, I don't have dementia. And so therefore I can reach out by phone, or I'm still driving a car, but I've been a bit restricted the last few months in going to hospitals.
For COVID?
Because of the COVID. But previously I've had 26 years, as you know, in trying to look after those people who need looking after as far as pensions concerned, and in dealing with the Department of Veteran Affairs, and also in visiting them in hospitals, aged care facilities and wherever they are.
Well, mate, we've got to wind up now. Thank you for being part of this project, and thank you for your continued service to the community here at not only Harbour Diggers, but the general community and the veterans community on the Northern Beaches. I thank you and I salute your service.
Yes, thanks very much, Sean. But I would like to say to the younger people in life to get a lesson from this idea of what's going on now in COVID. We have been through, well, I have been through the Great Depression, which was after many years when we were poor and we didn't have any money at all, and we had to work for everything that we got. But the idea in life is if you have things wrong with you, you're not the only one. You just don't think of yourself all the time. Reach out. You've only go down the street and you'll find someone worse off than you if you've got something wrong with you. Try and think about someone every day. When you get out of bed, think to yourself, now I've got a heart, I want to use it the right way. I want to care for someone that's far worse off than me, financially or physically or emotionally. Now I'm going to do it. No good talking about it, action, the only way to go.
Thank you, Will Edwards. Champion, mate.
Do you like that one?
Yes, I did.
Good.